Chris, if you can never make that face again, that would be great. Welcome to and here we go. Welcome to our second episode of Pocket Human. And we are excited to be here. I think we have figured out that when we actually go live, we are live. So we're learning as we go. But for those of you who may be new to our broadcast, the idea around Socket to me is to talk about relevant cybersecurity topics, predominantly threats, because there are a lot out there and we've got a lot of data around those threats. And I think we can share some really good insights there, but also any other hot topics that we see as relevant to discuss, things that may be hitting the news, things where we think there might be some clarity needed. So I have with me Mike Pedrick, who is our VP of Cybersecurity Consulting, and of course, Chris Roberts, who is our Chief Strategy Executive and Evangelist. I will get that correct one of these days.
You're doing a better job than I am. You're doing a better job.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just the
like say that 5 times
that hangs around.
So, and then I'm Francie Dudgery, and I oversee content marketing and corp comms at Nuspire. And so why don't we just dig into it? Because last time I think we could have gone for probably an hour more to talk about things. And I think we've got some big stuff to talk about. So if you all weren't paying attention, we did release our Q1 2024 threat reports. It is available now. I believe Gina is manning the chat, so she can post that in the chat. But anyway, we did it a little bit differently this time. If you've seen them before, we typically go through some of the high level areas like exploits, botnets, and malware. What we did this time was we dug more into ransomware and dark web marketplace listings. And I think there's some interesting stuff that we saw there, particularly the rise in those listings and the rise in ransomware, which I don't think any of us are super surprised about. But I was curious with, Mike and Chris, if anything from that report really stuck out to you.
I mean, to me, you said it yourself, Francie. It's the continued rise. It's the continued evolution. It's the continued fight against an adversary and a targets that are continually evolving. And I think it's one of those where, we've all suffered it. Mike, you're probably in the same boat as well. You walk into an organization after they've had an incident, you get things done for a period of time. And unfortunately, they're like, oh, great, we're okay. We either dodged the bullet or we recovered from the bullet. And like, okay, now we'll forget about it. And then you're like, well, hang on, the target keeps moving. And I think this is proof that the target keeps moving. We see organizations getting hit time and time again, and we don't seem to keep up on the security. We get it done, and then we forget about it until we need to react again.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that I would like to unpack about ransomware. And it's, my first experience with ransomware is now 14 years ago. And it was truly a spray and pray type of thing. Somebody clicked a link and ransomware was the immediate result. But more and more today, what we're seeing is ransomware is just the point at which the attackers get loud, right? That's when they want to get paid. They've probably been in the environment for a period of time. They've helped themselves to information from your environment. And when they know that they've got you by the short and curlies, then that's when they're going to want to get paid, right? So That's when the ransomware comes out. That hasn't changed. And to your point, Chris, that's, we close out the incident. We go through our incident response plan. We close out the incident. The ransomware is no longer there. Insurance is paid out, whatever insurance is going to pay out. And ta-da, we're magically delicious. Everything is back to normal. No, it isn't. And especially in cases when, again, it's been an attacker has been inside the environment for a period of time. Imagine they help themselves to your client list. Now they have a ready-baked A to Z list of other organizations that they can pursue. So,
I think the other thing here is if you put the mindset of an attacker and an adversary on, and let's face it, having done a red team for a number of years, if I'm going to the effort to break into the organization, I'm not going to just break in and leave one entry and exit point. I'm going to break in. I'm going to come in via, a click link or somebody going out to something malicious, watering hole, whatever it might be. And then when I'm in, I'm going to leave myself a number of different pathways and avenues and execution, not just on your machine, but on the printers, on the flat network that you have, and on 10 other things that haven't been patched because they're inside the network and they're safe. And so it's one of those things where, you heave that sigh of relief, yet behind the scenes, unless you're really paying attention and you have somebody that's watching stuff for you 24/7, the chances are you're not going to know if you've fully eradicated things.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you a question? Because I feel like this is kind of a terrifying thing. Not that I want to be, not that I want to scare everyone, but I remember in February when we heard about the DOJ going in and basically taking over lockbit operations.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, right. Like, this is great. It's going to stop them in their tracks. And literally, it's like they regenerated in no time and actually saw an increase in activity in Q1.
Yep.
So what is happening?
So, Chris, if I can, let me plant this flag in the ground here, right? When we say ransomware, it's fairly interchangeable whether we're talking about a ransomware gang or we're talking about a ransomware tool. And that's a disservice to the whole process, right? So if we take them and separate them out, we've got the Lockbit ransomware gang, we've got the Lockbit tool. All right. So I arrest every last person from the Lockbit ransomware gang. I'm not going to be able to because attribution is nearly impossible, but let's say that I do. Anybody who still has that tool has everything they need to reconstitute that gang or create a new gang or do whatever it is that they want to do. So this is a part of the problem, right? If you imagine a large scale nuclear weapon, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say that nuclear weapons were in the hands of various gangs, although now my head is exploding. Anyway, if I arrested the entirety of MS-13 and all of their weaponry, okay, I've eradicated the threat. But what are the odds of me arresting all of the individuals and all of their weapon, right? It's very challenging. Chris, go ahead.
No, you're right. I mean, this is, well, I think the other thing is as well, having created things out on the internet, both good, fair, and foul, I'm not going to go out there. Here's the thing. My expertise lies in a very certain skill set. And this is the same thing for anywhere. If I'm part of a gang, my expertise might lie in how to socially engineer people, or my expertise might lie in how to basically drop code in behind the BIOS and have it regenerate. My expertise is not in clearing the funds, is not in transferring the data, is not in the C2, the command and control centers. So what I do is I build my piece of the tool and then I sell my piece of the tool to somebody else. Now, you might go arrest me, but my tool's out there. It's for hire, it's for use. I get commissions off of it. That, I think, is what we're missing on this one. And it's the same thing as that when people like, hey, we took this. I remember when they took Pirate Bay down. Let's just talk about Pirate Bay. I remember that. I'm like, no, you didn't. What you did is you took one server down and the next 10 are going to come up because the code's distributed. Everybody has access to the bloody thing. And then there's a pay-for service. Francie, if I'm coming after your company, I'm going to go to Mike and say, hey, I need your C2, your command and control network. Mm-hmm. I'll go to myself and I'll use my code. I'll go to 6 other people and do the supply chain of how I monetize what I'm doing. You're not going to be able to take that entire supply chain down. We've been trying it for donkey's years with the 419 and the scams, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, are these efforts futile then? Or, I mean, should we be focusing on other things? Like, they're going to continue to do, they're like zombies, right? Unless they're going to keep going. So are there other things that we need to be focusing on to, protect our environments or things like that? Like, it just seems like they always regenerate.
Yeah, I mean, it's with food. At the end of the day, this is nothing more than a target-rich environment and a beautiful one. I mean, we understand it, and everybody who's listening probably understands what the issues, challenges, and problems are, but we all travel. I mean, I sat beside a wonderful lady on the airplane day before yesterday. I sat, great lady, nice older lady, and I'm sitting there, and she's on her iPad. She's got her earpads in, and she's all happy, and she's doing things, and I glance across, and she's on a banking site while sitting on the airplane, and she's doing this and doing some other stuff, and I kind of nudged her. I said, hey, how's it going? She's like, oh, I'm doing great. And I'm like, let's have a conversation. If you don't mind, I apologize for interrupting. She's like, oh, why? And literally, why, dearie? I'm like, well, because I'm a hacker. And she was like, oh, and I'm like, but I'm a friendly one. And so we had a conversation, and it's just, people don't think. We haven't given people the education, the reasons, whys, and wherefores to think. Now, if I stole all her money and got in the middle of it and took all her banks, well, then maybe she would learn and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Why should she have to go through that pain and suffering before we've done a better job of supporting or educating or doing something behind the scenes to protect her from the 25 million other people coming after her?
Right.
Yeah, I would add, this is a very simplistic comparison, if you'll allow me this, but fire is always a thing. Combustion is always going to be a thing, right? We arrest arsonists, but we don't try to eradicate fire, right? And so when you say, is this futile? No, it's not futile. In fact, it's necessary. We should all be protecting ourselves, mitigating the risk of ransomware in our environments. But the idea of eliminating ransomware as a thing is
That's what I mean. Yes.
Yeah, it's tied inexorably to elimination of encryption, and not a one of us is going to entertain that idea, right? Hopefully.
It depends if I have to report on whether I'm encrypted or not. Let's face it, there's a couple of companies out there that were a little liberal with the truth, shall we say, on their compliance reports as to whether they were encrypted or not. Well done, hotel chains.
So basically, so it's like fireproofing, so to speak, when we're thinking about our environments, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have some fires, but you have the tools in place to mitigate the damage that those fires do.
Yeah,
Mike's got a good point on the fire thing, though. I mean, hands up everybody who's got a one or two or several fire extinguishers in their house. I know I have. I got a couple in the house, got one in each one of the cars, etc., etc., etc. Yet we don't take that same approach when it comes to cybersecurity, just people in general.
Gosh, carrying that analogy out, right? Oily rags sitting around in a garage. Most businesses are distributing oily rags around their environment and then wondering why something goes wrong. Why it catches fire.
I love that analogy. It's I love it because, again, I think this one of the biggest challenges we have in our industry, and this goes through everything that we go through. The TBIR report has been out now for how many years? Our report goes out once every ballistic quarter. We tell people once every week what's going on.
Yeah.
But until something happens in the physical world, not in the digital world, if I steal your identity in the digital world, it is an inconvenience, a pain in the ass, and it can be really, really detrimental. But if I do something to you in the physical world, it's immediate. It is painful right away. You feel it, you know it, and so there's a visceral reaction versus the digital world, which isn't as much.
Apologies if you heard a cat meowing. That was my cat Noodle, and he is mad about something, and he wanted to. Maybe he doesn't like ransomware, and he wanted to let you guys know about it. You gotta love it.
A pair of slippers yet, or is he still like small and like one slipper, or is he big enough for a pair of slippers?
Oh no, he's a big boy. He's a big boy. Okay, so I love this conversation. I think this is valuable. I think, we also talked about in the report, I think this is something that continues to be a big issue is the IoT devices. And I don't know what needs to happen. So the Hikvision cameras, I can't tell you how many times we've included that in our threat report, but it's so easy for people to get in. And it's like we say, these are the things you need to do. You can't have the default passwords, but I mean, what's it going to take to educate people on how to do that? Because I think there are a lot of people who maybe like me, it's like I buy something that's connected to the internet, but how in the heck do I go and change that password? I don't know. Unless it's like my, like a smartphone or something, that makes sense to me. But like my toaster or my fridge.
You shouldn't have to. I think this is where this is one of the biggest problems I have is we're at the end of the food chain. At the end of the day, everything has been designed, developed, looked after, put in the consumer's hands. And then, unfortunately, for the most part, that's where we come in and go, oops. As opposed to sitting down, you talk about DevSecOps, development, security, and operations working effectively together, collaboration, for another word. We should be sitting down with the designers of that toaster and going, hey, love the idea of you putting it on the internet. However, let's have a conversation about what should be open and how it should be open and where it should be open and why it should
Mm-hmm.
be open. But even so, I mean, here's another one. I mean, you said you put a passcode on your smartphone. Sorry, mine's not. You put a passcode, but is the passcode 1234556 or is it 135792568? Is it the first or the last 6 digits of your social, your phone number, your home address? We're creatures of habit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit annoyed. No, I am a lot annoyed that the residential networking market isn't more palatable to stuff like this. Like, I go out and I buy whatever it is, whatever router is available to
Yeah.
me at Best Buy or whatever. Why is network segmentation not a thing automatically in the configuration of that device, right?
Right.
Because all we don't have to boil the ocean with this thing, right? If I buy a new router, I'm the average consumer. I buy a new router, I'm setting it up, and it says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up your internal network, and we're going to set up your IoT network, right? Just that alone, take it down to Fisher Price, Little Tikes level, right? Which is not a referendum on the average consumer as much as it sounds like it is, but make that simple such that everybody understands, yeah, I should be separating out my Ring doorbell from where I do my budget spreadsheet. I should be doing that on a recurring basis. That's one thing that I think that if we baked it into the configuration of the device, we spread the word. But that's not how it is. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing right now is just saying, oh, you want everything to talk to each other? We got you. Just plug it in, power it up, and it'll connect to the network and you're off and running. It's not good enough.
And so take that to another level because, I mean, the challenge, here's where it would be really, really nice. Mike, you make home routers, you make home routers. I make the Ring doorbell. I come to you and go, hey, I'm going to be putting Ring doorbells all over the planet. Here is the normalized behavior of a Ring doorbell. Outside of these parameters, don't let this happen, please. Playbooks, parameters, all this kind of stuff. Francie, you make the Arlo cameras. Arlo cameras need internet access, cloud access. So you come to Mike and you're like, hey, Mike, got this really cool camera, does everything fantastic stuff. It needs to see the cloud on these ports and this way. It needs to pass this type of traffic. It does this. Here's the app that goes in and out of it. You basically give me a menu or an instructions or a build list. I mean, we talk about software bill of material.
Mm-hmm.
But it's even higher level than that. It's like a profile. Hey, you want to use this, want to use it on my system. Here is the standard behavior that should occur. Anything outside of those parameters, somehow, somewhere, it needs to be flagged. Now, the challenge is if you're going to flag it to my mother's going to go, oh, yes, I need that to happen. Click. So I don't know how
That's
to
the
solve that
thing.
problem. Yeah.
Like, I think that's even advanced. I mean, for a lot of people, they don't even think about like network segmentation for folks. I think sometimes they're like, what even is that? I have.
But to Mike's
Right.
point, we shouldn't have to deal with it. I mean, we
shouldn't have
small
to.
businesses. I mean, that's something we do. We walk into a small business and we're like, hey, love the flat as a pancake network. However, we'd like to evolve with you a little bit, please.
For sure. Now, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit because I want to talk about Okta and the credential stuffing situation and data brokers. That was a big thing that came out this past week. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that because I know you have some opinions.
Go for it, Mike.
I know Mike does.
Actually, Mike, you talk about this first. I need a teaspoon to stir me tea with.
Okay.
So the first thing I'll say is it's probably no secret for anybody who follows me on LinkedIn, but I'm not a big fan of data brokers. But I want to also put out there that all of the rules that we've put out there, not the rules, the guidelines, the recommendations, don't reuse passwords, don't make your passwords silly, easy to guess, etc. For anybody who is not aware, and I don't think anybody listening is in this camp, but credential stuffing attacks are where I take credentials that I know and I just try to cram them everywhere that I can, right? Especially if I've captured somebody's identity and their password from, say, a breach from Yahoo or another breach from Yahoo or the third breach from Yahoo. I'm going to take those credentials associated with that person's identity. I'm going to find everywhere that I can identify that person having an account, and I'm just going to keep trying the thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's standard fare for credential stuffing. If I have a password and I have a user list, I am betting to some extent that there's a potential that somebody else in that environment is using the same password. Now, let's add single sign-on to the mix, because if I can compromise a single sign-on platform, I'm magically delicious have access to a lot of other systems, right? And so, again, the simple guidance: don't use silly passwords, don't reuse passwords. It I'm not trying to be reductive when I say this, but if more people had listened, if more people had adopted that acumen, that posture along the way, a lot of this, we wouldn't be talking about a lot of this sort of thing.
Chris, what about you?
So I'm going to add a little bit of color to Mike's thing. I have a list, and the list is I think it's about 150, 155 websites long. And let's say, Francie, I find your credentials sitting out on the internet somewhere. Signed up for a website. Website's been compromised. I have your email, a user ID, and a password. I'm going to take just that one line, and I'm going to drop it into a script that I have, and that script's now going to try it against those 150 odd other sites. Now, it used to be about 100 sites. Now my list is about 150. And that includes banking, financial, investment, healthcare sites. It includes all the social media sites. It includes I've got a long list, and it's broken down into categories. And I'm going to use it, and I'm going to try it, and I'm going to see if I can get in, and your phone might blow up, or if I can get in the middle of it, something's going to blow with a whole bunch of requests for authentication or two-factor if you got that. But I'll lay a decent cup of tea or a decent bottle of single malt that on a number of those, especially with certain folks, I'm going to be able to get into all sorts of other things. Because again, back to Mike's point, we're creatures of habit. We reuse. We as humans, again, haven't taught people, hey, there are 4 buckets of ways of putting information. Stuff that can be all over the internet, stuff I really kind of want to protect, stuff that shouldn't be seen on the internet, and stuff that shouldn't even be anywhere near bloody electronics. And if you break it down as simple as that, then you know how to coordinate effectively. And we haven't done a good job of doing it ourselves, or even teaching people how to do it. So, and again, single sign-on has been great, because those 155 sites, I'll put Okta in front of every single one of those, and now all I got to do is break one, and I've broken everything. Which
You've gotten.
And if I can tie it back to the data brokers, this is part of my frustration with data brokers existing, because I don't like them, is the most diplomatic way I can put that. Their role is in compiling data on each of us. So now take what they already have, they already know about us, feed it into a behavioral model or a profile modeling application, and say, well, I know Mike, I know what Mike's proclivities are. My God in heaven, how many cars has Mike bought in his adult life? Right? That's all information that can be purchased, pretty directly from organizations like Verisk and LexisNexis. And now I can start to plot out, what are the overlaps in interest? This type of person is going to be registered on these types of sites, make these types of purchases, and so on and so forth. And now I can target that individual profile based on information that data brokers will gleefully sell, right? So, or I can steal from a data broker. It's a treasure trove. And part of me is largely okay with data brokers being stolen from, but I don't want my data caught up there anyway. So anyhow, treasure trove of data to use to steal from folks.
Well, and so data brokers, so forgive my ignorance, do they operate on the dark web? Or is that more of like, I've breached an organization, I've got all the employee information or whatever? Like,
they don't need to.
They don't need to because they're already okay.
It's out in the open. Yeah.
But there still is. So yes, but you pay them for that data. So, but on the dark web, when they've got like credential stuffing, they've got all the credentials on the dark web. Like, are they paying for a package on the dark web to get all those?
That stuff's just not just on the dark net. That stuff's all over the place.
It's everywhere.
So, a well-known site is Pastebin. Now, Pastebin is...
Oh.
Yes, exactly. So Pastebin, if you look at Pastebin, the regular Pastebin is one of about 100 variations on the Pastebin theme. Pastebin's, how should we say, multiplied. So I'll just post something up there, and that I'll get credentials from there. I'll go to some of the code sites. So another one of those challenges we run into is if I'm developing source code or I'm sharing code. Let's say Mike and I and Francie, we're all sharing a code base and we're putting it up on something called GitHub, and we invite people, or we don't get the creds right, or we put something out to share, but we've got hard-coded credentials in it. In other words, user ID and a password is just sitting there in the code. Ran into, I had a fantastic conversation down at the CISO XC last week where somebody was doing a pen test against an application that uses data storage for some very interesting folks out there in the industry, and they had hard-coded ID and passwords in this darn thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mike's going to have a coronary. Mike,
Okay.
take some deep breaths. Do some rainbow breaths, as my children do. I find those quite helpful. Or box breathing, just whatever works best for you. I get it. This hits a nerve. I feel like, so you've got all of these data brokers, you've got stuff that's being sold on the dark web, you've got the ransomware stuff. It's like, I feel like, for me at least, and maybe it's my ADHD brain, but I get overwhelmed pretty quickly. So it's like, what do you do? I mean, what?
It's oh my goodness. It's very easy to slip into defeatism.
Yeah.
Nihilism with data brokers,
yes.
right? You just a little bit of effort goes a long way. Think before you download an app, think before you register for a thing. Is there a very real value proposition, or am I giving away personal data to get $5 off a pizza? That's not going to do it for me, right? So, again, a little effort goes a real long way. The unfortunate thing is that the horse is out of the barn, so to speak, on the whole data broker thing. There's a lot of money in it. There's a ton of money in being a data broker.
Yeah, and I think there's value of just like knowing what's out there too, like having more visibility into your environment, outside your environment, knowing what's happening, understanding. I mean, that's why we do the threat report, right? Because we want people to know what to look out for, what's happening right now, the behaviors of, some of these APT groups. Like, I think that's important too. I don't know, Chris, if you have some.
Yeah, I mean, that's something Mike and I are talking about. We had an internal conversation the other day because I'm getting ready to put a LinkedIn post, not a LinkedIn post. I'm getting ready to get a talk about its threat intelligence, basically threat profiling your boss for fun, profit, and risk mitigation. And it talks about it because it isn't just going out on the darker side of the internet to go look for this stuff. It's going to see what is out there. To Mike's point, it's very much a case. We broke into a very, very large power organization a couple of years ago because we went out on the internet and profiled a bunch of their engineers, figured out a couple of them were heavily into electronics and into like kitchenware. So we started sending them stuff and we started getting into their stuff, and we figured out which Starbucks they went to. And it went to the whole length where we basically broke into the power station through their home oven. And it's all because of what we put out there. So exactly to Mike's point, it's that think before you add. It used to be trust, then verify. And honestly, in this day and age, what we have to do is reverse that, is verify, verify again, and then maybe think about trusting for a short period of time only while you need to. Yeah.
So
zero trust.
Yeah.
I know we're coming up on time. We can go a little bit over. I mean, I'm not going to be... But, I do want to talk a little bit, when stuff does, hit the fan, so to speak. There are a lot of things that you can do. And so we are doing, actually, with these two gentlemen, Mike and Chris, a 2-part webinar series coming up around what to do, basically, and the steps. And it's a simulated attack that we'll go through, but I think there's a lot of stuff that people, it seems so simple and so basic, but I think everybody struggles with it. And so the first part we'll do a run through of just, the incident and the unfolding of it. And then the second part we'll talk about mitigation strategies, learnings, and things like that. But I wanted to see if you guys had any comments around that, because I think those things are super, super valuable, especially if you don't know what you don't know and you're like, oh crap, I've got some gaps here that I had no idea about. It's pretty helpful to go through those exercises.
We can make them easy and simple. They don't have to be complicated, convoluted, and take weeks worth of planning. You can sit down over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and just do it. Life is easy.
Yeah, start simple. What are you going to do if, right? Over the weekend, I did a class and somebody invoked the famous Mike Tyson quote, right? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yep.
But imagine getting punched in the face when you don't have a plan. So
yeah. Well, I hope you don't get punched in the face.
I hope I don't get punched in the face.
You haven't done anything so far that would make me want to punch you in the face, but it's early.
Challenge accepted.
It's okay, guys. We love each other. So, okay, I know we're at time. Are there any last minute things that you gents want to convey to our fine folks before we go?
I mean, we're there. We're around. Hit us up if you got questions, you got comments, you got issues. You somebody wants to send something or do something or ask questions. And if you don't ask questions, get us to ask the questions for you. We're there to help. It's as simple as that.
Mikey?
Couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah. And if you guys have ideas about things that you want us to talk about in future episodes, let us know. Comment in the chat. Shoot us a note on LinkedIn. We are here. We will be, I think it's the 14th for our next one. Yeah. So make sure you register for that. And we really appreciate everybody joining. And we will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye, everybody.
Take care, everybody.